I don't think it's a linear pattern of growth with sort of spirals, and we sort of spiral up, and we're spiraling. We might be at this one point, we spiral over that thing again, and then we come back at a different level. So now I'm looking at this story of I'm broken again from a different level. That what we think are our cracks, we're all a cracked pot, and what we think are our flaws, and I can't even do what I'm here to do. We're actually being of service in ways that we can't even imagine by being our authentic selves. So the word to forgive or pardon is shabakin. It also means to unhook a horse from a cart. There's enough for everybody. There's no lack in the universe. There's no lack in the mind of God. There's enough for everyone. And we want to be the ones that hold that vision of a world that works for the best and highest individual and collective good.
Ultra minds, ultra minds, ultra minds, ultra JK, ultra. Ultra minds, ultra minds, ultra minds, ultra JK, ultra.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ultra Minds with JK Ultra. And I'm so excited to share this guest with you guys today because this person was so important in my healing journey from one conversation, which really shifted me, changed my life, but also your lectures that you gave while I was at Rhythmia were also just so inspiring. So I would love to introduce you guys to John Jacob Mubarak, who is a public speaker, practitioner, healer, beyond what I can even describe. And you just did your TED Talk last week. And I'm so proud of you. So I'm excited to talk about it. Thank you for being here.
It's such a pleasure. It's a real honor. And I'm so glad to connect with you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So maybe we'll get into the Rhythmia stuff later how you've influenced me. But I know that in your TED Talk, you were talking about unbecoming. So what exactly is unbecoming?
Okay. This idea came to me. It actually came to me through a trigger. Do you ever have like one of those moments where like life holds up a giant mirror and says, "Hey, like, you want to deal with this now, or should I bring
All the time?"
Right? Like, that's it. That was that moment. I was in a mastermind with a group of really phenomenal friends that are people I love, and a couple of my friends were sharing about their project, and we were supporting each other, and it sounded really great. But I noticed while they were sharing that I started, like, something shifted in me, and I started to feel like resentful and cynical. It was like an inner Simon Cowell came out. It's like, nobody's going to sign up for that. That's not going to work. And I was like, what's going on? I love these people. And it was from that moment of like realizing that I was like envious of people that I love. Like, spiritually and intellectually, I wanted the best for them, but there was something emotionally that had me be resentful. And I started to look at that, and it took me back to some memories. And that's where the idea of unbecoming came. It was like, we are spending so much of life trying to become more of everything, more productive, more focused, more successful, more spiritual, more. And what I found was, it was really not about becoming more. It's about unbecoming all the things that we're not. And I thought of, like, the core of it is two things. The Buddhist saying that we're all struggling to become more of what we already are. And I was like, well, how do I become more of what I am? I'm already that, right? And I realized that you become more of what you are by becoming less of what you're not. And then I remembered Michelangelo's statement about David, that beautiful statue, right? And he said, I saw the angel in the marble and I carved until I set him free. That's really what unbecoming is. Like, we're already perfect, whole, and complete. Is like what you were saying earlier. We're already that. We just need to uncover the things that the grit and grime of the journey that we've taken on, to unbecome all the things that we're not, because we're already perfect right there. So that was kind of the crux of the talk.
Wow. And so when I heard you speak at Rhythmia, you gave an example that I've like continued to use in my live streams and so many different things in my classes. And it really was like just the perfect explanation. And you talked about how like we're born like as like a 360 soul, a 360 personality. And then over time, each little thing that happens, that 360 becomes more and more and more narrow until there's just this narrow path of what we believe our personality to be and what we believe ourselves to be. So it's so interesting, like when you're talking about the becoming, it's almost like widening it back to that 360 and really getting to be your whole self.
You know, I love it's so amazing. It's like hearing that back to me. I'm like, oh wow, I forgot all about that. That's a great. That's really cool. Yeah, it really is. It's like this idea we hear all the time. Oh, you're perfect, whole, and complete, and it's so hard to hear that. You're like, no, I'm not. There's so much that I need to fix about me that's not right, and things that I want to change. And that's really the irony of all self-help. You know, of any retreat, any self-help person, any speaker is like, well, do this and you'll be better. It's the foundation actually of it's the foundation of the myth of Adam and Eve, right? Eve didn't even have to take a bite of that apple because the snake just said, you know, eat this and you'll be better than you are now. And that's when that it's not original sin, girl, it's original guilt. Okay. That was the like, you're not enough. You need something else. And that's the whole point, right? Is that we kind of bought into that because I think for any of us to say we're perfect just as we are, it's like, no, I've got all these flaws. And the truth is that our flaws are actually the way we serve. And the things that we think are flaws are, you know, participate and help others. Like just yesterday, I was facilitating a class and a young lady, Arrhythmia, was like, we were workshopping, right, with her in front of the class. And she definitely felt uncomfortable and like, I don't want to take up time. And, you know, this is my thing. And, you know, everybody else is bored. But what she was sharing affected everybody, and her just being her authentic self and actually expressing what she saw as a flaw was so impactful, and everybody identified with it. And it was a perfect example of how us being our authentic selves, just as we are, is enough. And it actually serves. Okay, so can I go on another story?
Please.
There's this great story of a water carrier, a guy carrying water, and these two pots. And, you know, the water carrier has a stick, and he carries it on either end of the stick are these two pots, and he's carrying the water. And he notices this one pot is kind of sad. And he looks over and he goes, hey, pot, what's up? Why are you sad? And he goes, well, I got this crack, you know, and we carry the water every day from the well to the cistern in the house, and I spill like half my water. I can't even do my job. I can't even fill the cistern at the house. And then the other pot is perfect. No cracks, carries his full complement of water. Like, I'm worthless, you know? And the water carrier says, take a look at the path that we walk every day. What do you see? And the pot looks down and says, well, there's flowers. I see flowers. And the water carrier says, yeah, you know, you water those flowers every day. And then we cut those flowers and make an offering of beauty for the master's table. And that story I love because it shows that what we think are our cracks, you know, we're all a cracked pot. And what we think are our flaws, and I can't even do what I'm here to do, we're actually being of service in ways that we can't even imagine by being our authentic selves. So I think I'm just going to put a period on it there. I talked my way out.
That's so beautiful. Like, and it really is interesting. So, but what is the balance, right? What is the balance between personal development and healing and accepting yourself the way you are? You know, like that's kind of, but we know everything is in paradox. Everything is in divine dichotomy. And that's kind of the rules of the universe is both truths are true. Everything is a half truth. So it's kind of like, where does the balance, and I'm sure each person is different, but what advice do you have for kind of finding that balance of accepting yourself the way you are, but also wanting to better yourself and be more?
Yeah, there's an interesting slogan from, I call it a slogan, but it's a 14th century Tibetan koan, right? And they're these like kind of mind teasers that you need to, they're meant to get you out of your thinking mind and to receive. So this one slogan is, give up all hope of fruition, which sounds very uplifting, right? Like, you know, give up all hope. And the basis of it is that anytime we're hoping for something more, to be something more, to become more, to be, more spiritual, or, richer or thinner or taller, or whatever we're wanting more, we're fundamentally engaging in this internalized civil war, which is right now isn't enough and I'm not enough. And of course we want to improve. Of course we want to grow and expand. But the process, or the thinking of right now isn't enough and I'm not enough, actually keeps us locked in that pattern that we're trying to change. And so it's really more about acceptance than it is about transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Where that balance is, right? If I can accept myself as I am, we actually start to unwind the pattern of not enoughness, and then begin to grow in and actually transform. But it's about acceptance. And so the idea is, again, it's kind of what we were talking about before, that there's so many parts of us that don't have a place to be accepted within us. And it's this natural idea of not natural, it's an idea that's imbued in our Western culture, that that there's a certain way to be. There's one way to be, and no matter how expanded we are, this is deeply ingrained. So if I can just go off for a minute, I was a couple months ago, I was like lamenting that maybe people can identify with this, feeling overwhelmed, like, oh my God, I'm behind on emails, I'm not catching up on texts, and I get a lot done during the day, but I still feel like I haven't accomplished anything, and I'm just in overwhelm constantly. A friend of mine called and was like, you never have time to talk, you're always like so busy. And I'm like, but I'm not getting anything done. And I was like, what is it? Is it my ADHD? Is it dyslexia? What's wrong with me? Why can't I know other people are more productive and then I realized I have this story that I'm broken, that there's something wrong with me. Fundamentally underneath all of that was, and this is after so many years of growth. And, I don't think it's a linear pattern of growth. It sort of spirals, and we sort of spiral up, and we're spiraling, we might be at this one point, we spiral over that thing again, and then we come back at a different level. So now I'm looking at this story of I'm broken again from a different level. So I did a ceremony. It's like, all right, I can do a ceremony. And my intention is heal this story that I'm broken. So I drink the medicine, I lay down, put my mask on, the music's going. I'm having these beautiful pintas. Pintas are like the colors, the kaleidoscope shapes, the sacred geometry, visions, right? But it's all on my left side. And I'm like, okay, well, this should be centered. So I keep trying to center it, it was like, and it would like pop back over here, and pop back over here. And then all of a sudden I heard this voice say, this is how it happens for you. And for whatever reason, that made the connection, like, oh my God, here life has been happening. I'm having this beautiful experience, but something in me says it needs to be centered. Like, that's how deeply ingrained this idea of how we should be is, like on a deep cellular level. Oh, well, centered is right. Off to the left is definitely not right. Not correct, And I all of a sudden I saw all of the times, all the ways in life that I've been, it's like this normative stick up my ass. It's like, this is the way it should be. Like, why? No, it happens for me over to the left. And then I thought of, are you familiar with the artist Calder?
I'm not, no.
He's does these giant mobiles. Like, there's one in the National Gallery at Washington, D.C. These giant structures, like mobiles that like hang over a crib, but none of these are symmetrical. There's got this like big arm over to the left and this weird little ball over here. And they're these 1,000-pound structures, and you touch one thing and the whole thing moves and rebalances. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like a Calder mobile. Like, I'm growing that way and I got this thing over here, but my balance is different. And then I thought of like all those beautiful images of the James Webb Telescope that we're seeing, these super structures of the universe. And I was like, they look like Calder mobiles too. Like, the universe is funky,
Wow,
and,
true.
weird and misshapen, but beautiful and balanced and harmonious. And I just got this idea that, of this deeply instilled idea of how it's supposed to be. And it was another level of acceptance. So it wasn't anything about like time management and better scheduling and, you know, being more productive or any of that. It was this deep story that I'm broken. And just in that realization, I've had so much more space in my schedule, so much more like clarity around what I want to do, what's important and what can wait, you know, clarity about like prioritizing things. All that like came from healing that fundamental story. So back to the point of how do we know what's our balance between spiritual growth, personal growth and development, and accepting ourselves. And it's this basic like giving up hope that anything better. And it's in that release that we actually begin to transform. Does that make sense?
It does. And, you know, I got something out. So when I was at Rhythmia and, you know, I had kind of, I wouldn't say an easy first 3 nights, but it was just like I leveled out like perfectly by the end. I was like, I'm getting everything I need. And then in that 4th night, in the Ahe night, I was blasted to the oneness and like saw like everything as neutrality. I like forgot that I existed. It was very shocking. It was beautiful, but also very shocking. And pretty much like one of the biggest things that I got out of it that really transformed me forever after that was the acceptance that like everything is perfect, that, you know, a lot of the stuff, you know, me being into more of the spiritual spaces, there was like kind of this concept of like a new earth, or there's time running, or there's some type of shift or something happening. And it was like, oh, everything is fine. Like there's no time limit. There's no waking people up. There's no rushing people's process. There's no like, there is no definitive truth. And it's just like everything. It's like, and it made me accept a lot of things, which then led to my shadow work journey, which made me accept a lot of things in the outer world that are like bad, wrong, not good, evil, these things that, you know, happen in the world, which are undeniably, you know, painful and harmful to people. But it gave me such an acceptance of those things like, oh, everything is perfect, even those things, which I know can sound, you know, if someone's not wanting to hear that or ready to receive that, it can sound like, you know, really insensitive or whatever. But when I accepted it in the outside world of like, oh, wars are going to happen. And you know what? Thank God, because that allows this to keep happening. This whole experience for all of us keeps happening because we all are still learning. And then when I got that acceptance of like the outside world, of like wrongs in the outside world, then it started to like creep into my own shadow, which then put me through a crazy dark shadow work journey where, coming back to what you're saying, is like there was so many things that I believed were authentically me, and they were at the time. But then I realized how many of those things were coping mechanisms, how many of those things were masks, how many of my strongest qualities were actually rooted from trauma or rooted from things that I never dealt with. So in this like topic of like authenticity and unbecoming, what do you think about that type of stuff? Like, do you continuously become your authentic self? Is it always unfolding? Or is there like a real authentic self that you finally like kind of get to?
Let me just. So, first of all, I love your outer world acceptance of life as it is. You know, in fact, I think it's Viktor Frankl who said our last and ultimate power. And you know, this is a guy who lost 3 generations of his family in the Holocaust and came out and said our only power is our ability to respond to external stimuli. How we respond, and this is the alchemical power actually of our ability to change the world through our seeing, right? The way we see things, we know from quantum physics that our observation changes physical reality, the wave particle principle, right? That photon can be a wave or a particle, and it depends on our viewing that changes that. It can be both. So that first piece of like, how can we say that everything's perfect when there's war, there's famine, there's destruction? And it's this, our seeing, how we see things. Ram Dass says, if you want to know the truth, give up your opinions. So often we're not actually seeing a reality that's out there. We're seeing a reality viewed through our opinions and judgments and perspectives and points of view. And if we want to see through the circumstance, through the appearance, to the essence of what's behind, this is the art of alchemy and the alchemical transformation of the world. We change the world through our seeing. And so I want to stay there for a second, and then I'm going to get to the personal piece, because there's a great Ram Dass story. He was talking about seeing this oneness, this like seeing through to the essence of life and everything. And he tells this story of being out to dinner with a small group of friends, and he's telling them how he's getting closer to the oneness, and he's just like in love with everything, and like he loves the trees, and he loves you, and he loves that light fixture, and they're at this restaurant, and he goes, and I love this carpet, and it was like a stained, industrial restaurant carpet, and his good friend was like, I can understand like loving us, loving the tree, even loving the light fixture, but this carpet, I can't love the carpet. No. So Ram Dass said, my response to him was judgment, 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 right? Then fast forward, it's Ram Dass's 80th birthday. And his friend got a piece of that carpet with a stain on it and framed it and sent it to him for his birthday and said, if you love this carpet so much, why don't you replace the picture of your guru with the carpet? And Ram Dass did it. He goes, well, he didn't think I could do it. And this story to me like started me seeing how judgmental I am about the experience of life and what's good and what's bad. I live in the middle of nowhere in Costa Rica, and right next door, in the property next door, someone's building a house. And so it's like major construction. So if I'm not up by 5:30, 6 o'clock, the construction starts. So if I want to do my morning meditation in silence, I gotta be up at 5:30. And sometimes I don't get up at 5:30. So here I am meditating in a construction zone. Sound bad, the reggaeton and the construction workers saying stuff. And I'm judging this. And I really like judgment, judgment, judgment. This is life's experience. And if I want to see the truth of the experience, can I give up the filter of my judgment? And so your statement of like, yes, it's a tragedy that human beings are perpetrating these awful things against each other. And our intention and our purpose is a world that works for the best and highest individual and collective good. There's enough for everybody. There's no lack in the universe. There's no lack in the mind of God. There's enough for everyone. And we want to be the ones that hold that vision of a world that works for the best and highest individual and collective good, independent of the circumstance of what's going on. So we can see through that to see that this is all part of our ascending to a new level, a new age, the Aquarius age, right? Now, on a personal level, you're asking, is there ever that authentic self that just comes out? And do we ever get done excavating? Consciousness, the first idea is that consciousness is infinite. And we are infinite because we're God. We're God goddess. There's no separation. We are the thing itself. And so, okay, hold on. I'm just anchoring in. So this idea of, is there ever a moment that I arrive? And I would say there's an important distinction that I would bring up called mapping versus marching. So marching, if I'm in like a military unit and I got to get from point A to point B, and I'm marching there, I have a very direct intention and something that I have to accomplish. And if we by accident go into a box canyon, we're screwed. Like we've just wasted time. Now I've delayed myself. I'm not where I'm supposed to be. This is bad. There's the concept of marching. If I'm mapping, I definitely want to get to point B from point A. But my mentality, my consciousness is I'm mapping terrain, and I march into a box canyon and I've just mapped some new terrain, and then I'm still on my way. And I think that's the shift from, will I arrive at a place, or is it really about the terrain of consciousness that I'm exploring in all these different ways? Like there's really no bad turn if I'm mapping. If I'm marching, there's definitely a bad turn, but if I'm mapping, and this is another part of self-acceptance. Does that answer your question?
Oh yeah, it's awesome.
Okay.
You're tapped in, you're channeling it.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the work that you do. So I know that you do elemental rhythm breath work, and you
Yeah.
do the life visioning, and then now you've created your own kind of bringing those together.
Yes. Thank you. I've created this beautiful thing called well, it really just came through. It really was something that came through, the Spiritual Recalibration Circle. I was trying to think, like, it's really hard to describe what I do. People are like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I'm like a spiritual counselor. And they're like, so what is that? Are you a coach? Yeah. Are you a therapist? Yeah. Are you a psychologist? Well, and I was like, spiritual recalibration. Like that's what we do. We get into a conversation, we set an intention, and we recalibrate. And when you recalibrate an instrument, you're aligning it, right? So that it's smooth in its functioning, it's balanced. And the idea is that balance is never fixed, right? Just like the Colder mobiles, right? Balance, or the universe, balance is always, homeostasis is dynamic, dependent on circumstance and condition. We're balancing. So the Spiritual Recalibration Circle is a group of meditators. We're committed to meditation and breath work, and there's a daily like WhatsApp chat that for me is like my anchor of accountability. So I work well in groups. I really like it. And so, we check in every day. I did my morning meditation. We do I want statements. We do an oath of creation and materialization. So everybody's like just sharing what they're doing for their spiritual practice. And for me, it really helps because I do feel isolated. I mean, I have Rhythmia right here, 10 minutes away, which is awesome. And I get to interact with people. But then you finish that and you come home, and I'm in this really cool little casita, rustic, in the middle of the jungle, and you feel kind of isolated. So to have this group to check in and share my practice with is really awesome. And so Spiritual Recalibration Circle is a weekly group that meets, and we do meditation and Kundalini yoga and chanting, and just it's like a hybrid of all of that, of the breath work, of the coaching. It's really what I love about teaching at Rhythmia, right? Like we're in a class and we're talking about something, and someone has a question or someone's going through something, and we interact and kind of work together, workshop something together, and it really amplifies and is powerful for everybody. I wanted to recreate that. So that's the Spiritual Recalibration Circle, and it's just a joy. It's really fun, and we have a great group of people, and it's open enrollment. It's each month is a different topic, so you can join at the beginning of the month. And we've done topics on healing our relationship with money, on the power of want, because especially in the spiritual communities, it's like wanting is bad. That means you're coming from lack if you want something. Like, no, wanting is your fire, man. Wanting is actually the etymology of want is to call something to you. And so we're magic. We have all the power that created all the heavens and all the earth within us. We are the creators of our life experience. We may have been victimized in the past. Shit might have happened to us, but our identity is not victim. Our identity is not, trauma survivor forever, right? Like you were talking about, I'm kind of tired of chewing on this same piece of gum of like, heal, heal, heal. It's like, no, I'm actually a powerful king. You're a queen. We're creating our life experience. No more victimhood. What do you want to create? Let's go. What do you want? That's the key to creation, is your fire, your want. And then from the fire, the next thing we need to do is get our emotional body in alignment. We need to recalibrate the spiritual body with the emotional body. Because, you know, a lot of times this is the problem with most manifestation teachings and stuff that are out there, is that people are, you know, vision boards and affirmations, which are all super powerful. That's all mental. But if, you know, I can have a vision board that I want $1 million. I could really really want it. And intellectually, I really want it. But my emotional body is like, bitch, you have not even seen $10,000 in one place, right? Like, you know, like, that's not even possible. So there's something that's not calibrated. So when we start to bring the emotional body into alignment with the intellectual, with the mental and the spiritual body, is where we start to create. And so this idea of no victimhood is one of the ways that we start to bring the emotional body, recalibrate it into alignment, so we can really start creating our lives, because that's what we're here to do. Like spirit, God, the universe doesn't care what we do as long as we're creating. And then the creation that we make, the expressions, you know, are they high vibrational? Are they for the upliftment, right? What are we creating? And the universe doesn't hear us, it feels us. And so you know, what are we putting in? And our life, what we're experiencing in life right now, is the exact result of what we've been putting in. So if we're not liking the results, we get to change the expression. It's really not about the law of attraction. It's really about the law. Reverend Michael teaches this, the law of radiation. What am I radiating out? And so that's kind of what the spiritual recalibration circle is all about.
I have so many comments on what you said, but first, how do people join?
Yes, thank you. They can go to my website, which is sacred-truth.com. And there's a whole piece about the spiritual recalibration circle. You can investigate it and see if it calls to you. And if it's something that calls to you, let me know, because it's a monthly subscription, but there's no barrier to joining. So if I really like, let me know. I have people at all different levels. There's scholarships. I just want people to come and join. And if you can afford to pay the full thing, cool. If you can't, let me know and we'll work it out.
Oh, I love that. Okay, I have different comments about things that you've said. So
Okay.
One, where you talked about kind of being hard to describe what you do. I have that same thing, and a lot of people that I gravitate towards have that same thing. And what I've really been like decompressing, breaking down about this is that, like, it really is like, you know, we're kind of, especially in the spiritual spaces, it's gotten so fixed on like doing, on having a title, on like being a healer, an astrologer, a channeler, a this, a that. And it's like, really, you know, it comes back to that old quote of like, you're a human being, not a human doing. And I feel like this is the new era of spiritual work, is people who are just being themselves, working towards their authenticity. And then it comes out in all these different modalities. It comes out in things that sometimes might not even seem like they go together. And you look at like indigenous cultures and things like that. The elders did everything. You know, they were musicians, they were artists, they were healers, they cooked, they created things. And it's like we kind of have brought these like spiritual practices into such small boxes. Like, you need to be a psychic, or you need to do this type of facilitating, or this type of modality. And I really think that that's like the guru age is dying out, and this is how it ends up integrating with the whole world and ends up really being the way of life, because you can be all of these things and use all of these modalities, but really it's all at the core of like, you're being yourself and your gift is you.
That is the hardest thing to embody, right? For me, I don't know if you have this experience, but like I was just teaching a class last night, and there was this theme going in the back of my head, like, I got to do more. I got to give these people more. What do I need to give them? You know, that's like, they're here because they're digging me, being me, you know, like we don't have to prove ourselves so much. And I don't know what just came up. One of the people that I love to facilitate retreats with, you know, he's this amazing yoga teacher and has been like on the world stage of yoga teacher training, and recently, over the last few years, he's started a OnlyFans page, and he's like now doing in addition to all of his spiritual work. And there was a part of me that was like, ooh, I don't know if I can, do a retreat with you now, like doing porn and, and started talking. And it's like, this is like, he's interested in the exploration of sacred sexuality, and he's doing it in his own way. And then I thought of me, like, is spirit exclusive? Is there anything in unconditional love that says exclude? No, it's unconditional. And then and since then we've facilitated, and we're going to facilitate another retreat at the Jungle Neighborhood for male identified LGBTQ. And I love facilitating with him because it's like, it helps me to express like all those facets. And again, we were sharing earlier before we jumped on about how in a monotheistic Judeo-Christian mythology, there's not a lot of room for ways to bring other aspects of us into the divine. Whereas in like Hindu mythology or even Greek mythology, there's Dionysus, or there's, Tantra. There's ways to bring the sacred sexual into, bring in all these aspects of ourselves. And I think that's why what we were talking about earlier, the Tibetan slogan, give up all hope, is that and even my, this is how it happens for me. It's like, there's something deep in the psychology of our Western canon that says there's a way we're supposed to be. And what you just talked about is like this new age of people expressing all of themselves in all these different facets. Now, I'm not planning on doing porn anytime soon, but don't think there'd be a big market for that. But this friend of mine, Rocky, just blows my mind and has expanded my understanding. And I think it fits very well with like what would normally be considered completely diametrically opposed. He's brought together, and that's his unique expression. And we get to bring our unique expression.
Mm-hmm. And it gives people permission to be their full selves. And I feel like, I'm sure this comes up a lot. It comes up with a lot of the people that I work with that come I do hypnosis work. So like a lot of the people that come are kind of confused about like, well, which avenue? I have all these talents. I have all these gifts. And this whole like thing, you have to niche down. You have to like, I don't believe in that, and it's like, and also too, like a lot of the spiritual teachers of the past, they kind of like had like one message, and they just said that one message forever until like in their whole life, because they were laying a foundation. But now it's like each person gets to be multifaceted, gets to do things that are outside of what we think is spiritual. And it gives people permission to like be a whole person. And it kind of comes back to, what I always quote of you saying about that we're born 360, and then we just slowly become this narrow path that we have to follow because that's who we think we are. This is our identity. And the identity is really just, this thing happened. Someone told you to shut up. Someone told you this didn't look good. You didn't do well at this class. And it was all those things that made us into this narrow path. And, and it's such a fine line too of like, sharing those things, because it's like, then we're exposing more of ourselves. And so like, what do you think about kind of that aspect of it? Because a lot of people, they feel authentic, but then it's like, okay, well, let me be authentic in front of a group of people, and everything changes and all those coping mechanisms and stuff come back. So what advice do you have for kind of sharing your authentic self openly?
I think to answer that question, I'd like to go back to how those coping mechanisms were formed. So the basic psychological premise is that we have an experience, and that experience creates a belief, and that belief then becomes a coping mechanism. So something happened. So like back to what I was talking about with the TED Talk and those feelings of envy and jealousy that I was having towards my friends, when spiritually and intellectually I wanted the best for them, but emotionally I was jealous. And I looked at that, and when I started sitting with that feeling, some memories came back, and they were like, these are not like, I wasn't molested, I wasn't abused. They were like, one of them was my sister was in a high school play, and my parents took me to see the play. Must have been like 6. And the curtain went up, and it was Oliver Twist was the play. And when the curtain went up, all of my neighborhood friends were like playing the young orphans. Like apparently their older brothers and sisters told them about the play and how to be in it. And my sister didn't tell me. And I was like sitting in the audience at 6. And I remember being like, why am I not up there? Because, even at that age, I knew if anyone should be on that stage, it was me. But like that moment, a silly thing like that memory came up as I started thinking about the jealousy and envy. And the memory was, I get left behind. And then that became, so I had an experience. The feeling or the belief is I get left behind. And then then to not feel that, we develop armor, right? Or coping mechanisms, like perfectionism or people pleasing or avoidance or hyper success or hyper alertness or control or any number of, codependency, addiction. All of these things are coping mechanisms, hoping that the coping mechanism will help us not feel the uncomfortable feeling. But the truth is that the coping mechanism actually imprisons us in the old story. So that's actually the process of unbecoming, is we start to use every trigger in our lives as a teacher, every uncomfortable moment as an invitation to just take a look. So when you're talking about how do I express in front of people, all of a sudden these coping mechanisms start to come up. Well, that's the invitation to go, all right, what am I feeling? Embarrassment, nervousness. What is it? Okay, let me sit with that feeling and observe it. And as we can't change what we don't see. And then as we feel it, right, instead of suppressing it, which, I basically used to eat a pint of ice cream and watch reality TV or, scroll, suppress and snack, but as we start to feel it, then actually that's when the memories came flooding back. And the question to ask is, what does my emotional body need to feel whole, to feel safe? And as we get into the emotional body, that's when we can begin to really heal, and not to overuse that term, but to rewrite the old narrative. And I use a mantra. So, for example, in the story of the play, and feeling left behind, that's what was coming up for me. I wasn't reacting to my friend's success. I was like time traveling back 6 years old, front row at a play I wasn't in. That was what was going on. So then how do I work with my emotional body to shift that, to calm that emotional body? What does it need? And so I started to work with mantras, and a really powerful mantra should do 3 things. It should affirm your connection, affirm your worth, your worthiness, your value, and reclaim your power. Because all of this is a sort of victimhood, right? Like, oh, I wasn't in the play, it's not a villain origin story, right? I wasn't abused. My brother didn't beat the crap out of me. My parents didn't abandon me. I just didn't get to be in a play. But those are the moments. We all have a story. And so the mantra that I created to help calm my emotional body is, I am connected to everything and everyone. We are one. There's the statement of connection. In this now moment, I am all that ever was, all that is, and all that ever shall be. To me, that's a statement of enoughness. Now, your words might be different, but whatever the words are, they need to make your body sing, to make your emotional body say, yes, I belong. Yes, I'm connected. And then my statement of power is, I create what I want. And what I want comes to me with ease and grace in a magical way. And to me, that removes me from the comparison and worry about being left behind, and narrows me into, all right, now I'm no longer a victim. What do I want to create? What do I want? That's the most powerful question we can ask. What do you want? Most of us don't know. So when you're saying like, okay, now I want to be vulnerable and I want to share, and then I have these coping mechanisms come up, it's just another invitation to check in and to observe and to feel and to ask empowering questions like, what does my emotional body need? And from that question, we can then create a mantra that we then treat our mind with whenever those, so I still say that mantra. The other day, something happened and I was like, "Meh," and I went, okay, I'm connected to everything and everyone. We are one. It helps me so much. So that's my answer.
So what's interesting about the victimhood stuff, and it was really like after my experience at Rhythmia around the 6-month mark was like I said, all of this kind of realization started to settle in. And so I was very like, I never saw myself as a victim. I was always like, so I couldn't even cry when I was a kid. So like, I was so like, oh, like I'm not. And then after, the layers that were removed from me and like the heart healing and so much stuff was resolved in me from the ayahuasca. And I felt like I was great. I was done after that. And then the waves of integration started coming in. And I realized like, oh, actually, I have been lying to myself, even
Mm,
so like cleverly. And it made me realize like how many things in my life I had, and the mind is very clever in protecting us. So if we're someone who's very like strong-willed and has a certain image of ourselves, then it's going to be even more clever in like hiding those things from ourselves. And so it was a really intense process for me to like learn to be vulnerable, to kind of accept that I actually secretly did have victimhood stories, but they were like so embedded so deeply that then I had to like allow those in to then release them again. And so it's interesting is that, sometimes people will hear stuff like this. And I was one of these people before who thought certain things didn't apply to me.
mm.
And it was actually like super clever way of coping with things. And it wasn't until, it's like safe until finally it's safe to deal with that those things start to come up. And, I needed similar to the parts work, you could do the parts work or like, I did a shamanic soul retrieval. And, there's so many like different modalities, like there's hundreds of different ways that people, like you're saying, like you sit in, you check in and you allow these memories to come in. There's so many different versions to allow these parts of ourself to come back and to integrate. And so I want to talk a little bit about when we were at Rhythmia. So after that fourth ceremony, I had like a pretty like seemingly easy time in the first three. And then the fourth one, I was rocked to my core. And then at that point, everybody's like, who's been having a hard time was like, wow, I'm healed. And I was like, I'm scared. And I was so grateful to find you in Roots in the where we eat lunch at Rhythmia. And I was so grateful to talk to you at that time because you really like completely shifted me and like brought me back. And like I had seen like the Matrix, this, that, like I was out of this dimension and I was like very shaken by it, even though I already knew these concepts, but seeing them with my eyes open really
Right.
rocked me. And one thing that you said that was so like that has stuck with me that you're like, oh, well, Mother Aya was just talking to you in the language that you talk to people on your platform. And I was like, oh my God, that's right. I'm always talking about the timelines and the Matrix. And she just like spoke to me in that same language. But I wasn't like, when I saw it, it really rocked me still.
That's so, it's so funny too. I remember, I can see us sitting at the table. I remember having that conversation. It was such a great conversation. And it was funny too, because, that is the day, usually Friday after the fourth ceremony, everybody's like lit up and you were really,
I was shaken up.
you were shaken, totally. And there's just so many simple principles. I'm so grateful to have this time at Rhythmia and get to see and work with literally thousands of people, and in that process, it's like, I don't know what to say other than just seeing the truth of that the medicine doesn't create anything. It just reflects what's inside of us. That is like one of the most fundamental truths that I've observed and have been taught. Like that's something that Taita Juanito said. Taita Juanito is our lead indigenous shaman at Rhythmia, and he's from the Inca tribe, which ultimate descendants of the Incas. And when he said that to me, it made so much sense, you know. So, but let's talk more about your experience and
Well, so it was really interesting because, you know, it gave me like, after that, you said, like, okay, go to the vibration plate, go to the sauna for a minute, put yourself in the cold plunge, and then go to the dance class. And I was like, okay, I'm going. And like, once I got on the vibration plate, I started to feel okay. I started to feel normal.
it's
And then,
amazing.
yeah, no, it was incredible. And by like after that, like it's called, I think, Dance of Liberation.
Yes.
After that, like doing all of the exact things that you said, then I was like, oh, okay, I'm fine. I could go back. And I, for literally like 4 months after that, was like in a state of bliss where I was like, would be in traffic and I'm like, isn't it beautiful? Everyone has somewhere to go.
I love that.
And then I started to actually get anxiety, and I never had anxiety in my life. And that's also because of like these protections that I thought were me being strong and strong-minded were actually these protections of allowing certain things to come up. And then I was like, oh my God, is this what everybody's been experiencing when they talk about anxiety? This is terrible. And it took some time then to, that eventually led to me like getting a lot of information about like the things that I needed to, not that I had anything like repressed or forgotten. I
Right.
had just not really sat with, like, that was wrong. That was messed up. And that was what I hadn't sat with. And that's the things that I needed to sit with, was not so much like remembering things that happened. It was looking from a neutral lens at what happened. And it's like, wow, that is sad to happen to a kid, or that is sad to happen to a teenager. And it took months. It took me like 3 or 4 months to really like allow 35 years of that stuff to come in. And what was amazing though is now I feel like I'm not afraid of anything ever again, you know, because I'm like, you face your demons and you're like, well, it's fine. Darkness is beautiful. Darkness is actually still beautiful. And I'm very grateful for, you know, that whole experience, but I do, like, I'm so grateful for coming out of it. Like that
Right.
was exactly what I needed at that point to shift.
Well, you're so right about the, like, first of all, you were saying earlier was so true. Really resonated with me that, we're like, we're seeing life through this lens. And you said, like, I didn't have any victimhood, or I didn't, those things didn't apply to me. And then it's so beautiful. What you also just said is this, like, looking at these earlier experiences through a new lens, which is exactly that process of unbecoming, of like, I had an experience, it created this belief that just got it, and it's automatic, right? It's like the other piece of this that's so important is the amygdala, which, the amygdala is like the drama queen of the brain. And I also, by the way, just side note, I think it would be a great drag name. I'm just saying. Amygdala. Anyway, so but she stores memories in feelings, not words. And it's like when we touch a stove for the first time as a kid, you learn instantly not to touch that stove ever again. And even years later, when the stove is cold, you hesitate. Amygdala is just like, hot. She doesn't know it's off. She just knows hot. And it's the same thing with that thing that happened when I was 7 and that thing that happened when I was a teenager, is they get encoded in the amygdala in feelings. And then these responses, we're not even conscious. They're just automatic. So it's kind of like what you were saying, like, well, it doesn't apply to me. I don't do that, because it's so deep within. And that's why like, when we do notice I'm uncomfortable, or I'm afraid to share, or that's a moment to then observe and feel and ask, and then, to do that process of what you did, to look at these things and then say, because it's not about denying the past, because that was fucked up what happened, or whatever it is. We've all had those experiences. That wasn't right. And yet that's not our identity any longer. And we
Mhm.
get to, there's a beautiful word in Aramaic, which is, these ancient languages have multiple meanings for single words, right? And they're very frequently wildly different. Like, so the word to forgive or pardon is shabakin. It also means to unhook a horse from a cart, which I love,
Wow.
right? Like, to forgive is literally just like unhook from that
Mhm.
carcass of the past, and to walk now with relieved of that. I'm not denying it. I'm not denying that thing, but I'm just leaving it in the past. That's
Wow.
actually forgiveness. I love
Mm.
that, right? Shabakin. So it's like you didn't deny those things that happened. You just went, okay, and I'm no longer that anymore. I'm not that teenager. I'm not that 5-year-old. And we get to honor those parts of us, because it was that 6-year-old that felt left behind that was still in me after all this time of all the work and all the ceremonies and all that. There was another moment. And had I been working with jealousy and envy before? Yes. But again, it's not linear. And it's like you probably dealt with those same things earlier, but now you're dealing with them at a higher, more expanded
Mm.
level. And
Right.
so we just come around it again. And there might be another round of jealousy and envy to deal with, but as we take this on, like, again, releasing the lens of judgment and opinion, and accepting, like, that I was jealous. Like, that's embarrassing to admit, that I was envious of. And here's the difference. Jealousy is, I want what you have. Envy is way uglier. Envy is like, I want what you have, and if I can't have it, I don't want you to have it. And that's
Mhm.
what I was like. I don't want to admit that to all your listeners, that that's who I was being, but that was like, we gotta look at it and go, okay. And guess what? I don't know anybody, that hasn't experienced a feeling like that. But nobody's putting it on their highlight reel,
Well, I love that that's, like, really, like, kind of are coming back to, like, this kind of new age of kind of or new version of these, like, spiritual practices and teachers are more being. And I think, like, talking about judgment, jealousy, envy, these things, it's like a lot of the kind of older spirituality is kind of like, oh, dissolve these things. These are negative feelings. These are lower feelings. Release them. And then people deny them when they're happening versus just like accepting, like, jealousy is a part of creation as well, and it's still asking to be seen. It's still asking to be looked at. And when we see these things come up, instead of denying that we feel jealous about something and being like, no, 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 I'm a good person, actually. I've done a lot of work to be a good person. And where it's like, actually, it's okay. Allow yourself to admit that you're being judgmental, maybe even feel the judgment a little, maybe talk a little shit for a couple minutes and get it out your system.
Totally. I love that. I love that. That's perfect. Yes. Well said.
Okay, so you were talking before about your retreat. So when is the retreat? What exactly are you guys doing on the retreat? Where is it? How do people sign up?
Okay, you're awesome. Thank you. 2 retreats coming up. I have a retreat in Peru called Echoes of the Infinite. And this is such a cool, this will be my 9th time to Peru. And I probably won't be going back for at least 2 or 3 years. But this is a Wachuma retreat, and Wachuma is San Pedro. It's also
Mm.
called San Pedro. It is a cactus from the high Andes. It's a beautiful heart-opening medicine, um, and so, unlike ayahuasca or psilocybin, which is a beautiful inward journey, and Wachuma, you drink the medicine and you hike, and you dance and sing and connect with nature, and the so we're going to Peru. We'll be working with the indigenous Quero and Quechua tribes, which are the also like the Inca. They're descendants of the Incas, and so we're staying at this beautiful lap of luxury place called Raíces Inca,
Oh,
which
that's where I did ayahuasca.
really, okay,
It was
is it
amazing.
latest
Oh
or
my
what?
god. Like times a million. It's the most like beautiful, sacred. Oh my god. Wow.
I'm so grateful that you know it, right? Because so we'll be basing ourselves there. But we'll
Mm.
do 2 Wachuma ceremonies. One will be a teepee ceremony, which is taking from the Lakota and the North American indigenous, and merging the eagle and the condor. So we'll be merging these two traditions in the teepee. And then we're going to go up to Asangate, which is like the grandfather of all mountains. It's one of the most sacred mountains in the Inca culture. And we're staying in a Quero community with the families. And then they'll take us up, then we'll drink the medicine the next day. And this is at like 16,000 feet. And we'll be walking on the medicine up to these sacred lakes and having our ceremony in the sacred lakes. And we have sicaros, which are the ancient musicians with us. So we'll be walking the mountains with like drums and flutes, and oh my God. And so there's, you know, a temazcal and yoga and meditation and breath work and all of that, and farm to table organic food. And as you know, Peru, like I thought the fruits and vegetables in California were good until I moved to Costa Rica. And then I thought the fruits in Costa Rica were good until I went to Peru, you know, and it's like different level, right? So that's happening May 29th. And there's actually 3 spots left. So I'd love to have folks, if they're interested.
And that's the same place, Sacred Truth?
Sacred-truth.com. And so that the Peru retreat is on there. And then July 27th, I'm partnering with Rocky Heron at the Neighborhood, which is an amazing retreat center south in Costa Rica by Uvita. It's like there's 5 giant waterfalls within walking distance of the retreat center. It's on the property of the retreat center. And you know, being in safe queer spaces is so amazing. I don't feel excluded at Rhythmia. You know, I'm totally included, and the ceremonies are beautiful, but there's something different about, and I'm facilitating the psilocybin ceremony there. So I lead psilocybin ceremonies as well. And so I'll facilitate the psilocybin. Rocky will be doing yoga and movement, and he does human design, and I'll be teaching Unbecoming. So it'll be like this, and just to be in a space with no sex, like queer men, no sex is weird. You know, where it's like someone told me being gay is like playing football with no defense, you know. All offense, you know. But to be in this safe space where sex is off the table, right? And like one of my favorite memories was like a cuddle puddle, right, with these amazing men that we've been on this retreat with, and no because, you know, cuddling leads to sex, dancing leads to sex, getting naked leads to sex, all this stuff. And so when that's off the table and you can actually just be queer men together, it's so healing. It's so healing. And then the medicine and the movement and all of it, and being in nature. So that's happening at the Jungle Neighborhood. That's also on my website, and you can go to the Jungle Neighborhood, but that's July 27th through August something. I can't remember. Those are the 2 things that I've got coming up. And
Wow, they both sound incredible. And Peru is incredible, but that retreat center is so beautiful. Like, honestly, anyone who was like following, I was posting about it on Instagram while I was there. It's so beautiful. Like, it is just, and especially to go in May, right? Is that when it is?
End of May.
End of May is a good time to go to Peru.
Yes, it's beautiful weather there at this time. So thank you so much for letting me share that. I'm really grateful.
Yes. And what else? Is there anything else that you have coming up? Anything else that you have coming out?
Well, hopefully the TED Talk will be coming out. Not hopefully, it will be coming out. But I don't know when. So as soon as
so it will be available to watch online at some point.
Yes, the TED people edit it and then they post it, and they don't really tell you when. So, but trust me, when it comes out, I'll be pasting that sucker like bumper stickers everywhere. Like, hi, my name's TED Talk Jacob. You know. Thank you. Yeah, that's what's up right now. That's the spiritual recalibration circle and the retreats and teaching at Rhythmia, and yeah, life is so. You know, I bet your life is like this too, like the space that. The distance between what we have to do and what we want to do is really narrow.
Right.
And the gap, right? Like
right.
Everybody's life can be like that. We all have the ability to do that. And it's this process of unbecoming, this process of shamanic soul retrieval, all the work, And it's not even work, it's the journey.
Mhm.
Because there was a time in my life where I was, a sales manager at a yacht company and working in an office and, wondering like, is this really what life is?
Mhm.
And so for anyone out there that's feeling that, like this is their life is, this is available. This is available for everybody.
Right. And, like coming back to that human being, not human doing, I think sometimes people are so in their head of like, well, what is it? What am I? What do I call myself? What do I? And that is like holding them back from like really just like sharing who they are and finding all of those things. Cause a lot of times the things that we dreamt of when we were younger, the people who are on the path, what we're doing is a version of that, but it's not what we really thought that thing was gonna be at all.
So true. And I think that's the difference between mapping and marching, right? Like
Mm.
we're like, well, what am I supposed to be? Well, okay, if I knew, then I would plot a course from my 9 to 5 job to being a yoga instructor or whatever, right? Like there's this clear line. But and as we were talking about, and you said so beautifully, like there's so many facets of what we're doing. It's not just one thing. And so when we begin to start just mapping, take
Mhm.
that first step and start to map the terrain, and we start to explore, and you might get in a box canyon and it's okay, and then you might climb to a peak and see a beautiful vista.
Mhm. Oh, wow. Well, so thank you so much. This was such a beautiful conversation. I'm gonna post your stuff below in the description so people can follow you, keep up with your stuff, because I know sometimes you do your lives from Rhythmia that are great, and then, you share a lot of interesting stuff too on your Instagram, so I'll put your links below. And
Thank you.
that's our bell, guys. No.
And I was like, so sorry, I don't know where that came from.
Well, thank you so much for being here, and I can't wait to connect again and to see your TED Talk.
I am so grateful. This has been such an amazing conversation and just flowed with such joy. I'm just in love with you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Ultra Minds with JK Ultra, where every Thursday we come out with a new interview interviewing some of the greatest minds in spirituality, consciousness, aliens, conspiracies, astrology, and so much more. And make sure you check out my Tuesday Night Live every Tuesday night, where I do a live stream and we do a Q&A and we go a deep dive into topics like the simulation theory, shadow work, spiritual bypassing, spiritual gurus turned cult leaders, aliens, my own experiences, and so much more. So make sure you subscribe, put on notifications, and if you would like to support my work, you can also become a subscriber to my Substack, which is $11 a month at jennifercarmody.substack.com. And once a month for our paid subscribers, we do a live event where we do a group hypnosis, a group meditation, or a group manifestation exercise. And thank you so much. Make sure that you subscribe, comment, do all the things, all the YouTube stuff.